Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So, of course, this is not just Parashat Tetzaveh, but it is also Shabbat Zachor. Shabbat Zachor, as we will talk about in much more detail tomorrow, is the Shabbat where we read about the remembrance of Amalek and the tragedy that they unleashed upon us. But it is not from this Torah portion. We grab the maft here from another part of the Torah, from the book of Devarim, the Deuteronomy, and we place it here. Now, while there is good reason to think that this section must be read each year, obviously we have to ask, why are we reading it now? Why not read it when we're in Deuteronomy? Why read it at this time of the year? The answer is, of course, there's a holiday next week, known as Purim. And the holiday of Purim is considered to be a continuation of our struggle against Amalek, because the holiday has us against Haman. And Haman is, of course, known as the Agagite, which is one of my favorite English words to do, which is Agagi is nice, but Agagite is so much more fun in English. And, of course, the last king of the Amalekites was King Agag. So, Haman, as a descendant of King Agag, as a descendant of the Amalekites, it works well to have Shabbat Zachor be the week when we read this right before the holiday of Purim. But that also means that we are given a little heads up, a little warning. Just as we have warnings before the high holidays, beginning with the month of Elul, our introspective period, which reminds us that the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot are just around the corner, giving us time to get our spiritual as well as Sukkah and Lulav affairs in order. Just as we have HaChodesh, the reminder before Pesach, that Passover is around the corner, and we have to get not just our chametz in order, but also our Seder and every other aspect. And of course, the counting of the Omer tells us that Shavuot is just around the corner. This is our reminder that Purim is around the corner because there's stuff we got to do. That is to say, Purim has 4 mitzvot that go along with it. I know everybody thinks of Purim as just being woohoo, but there's a commandment that goes with that woohoo. In fact, there are 4 commandments. Does anybody know just one of the different obligatory activities that we engage in on Purim?
Give gifts to the needy.
Give gifts to the needy. Matanot le'evyonim. It is a mitzvah written into the book of Esther itself, if you are still sober enough to get there in the chapter 9, that we give gifts to the needy. And that means that on Purim itself, we look for people to be able to give a gift to. If you can't give directly because you're not sure of anybody who is in need personally, you are welcome to put something in our food pantry, stop by a local food bank, or do some other action to make sure that you are helping somebody to be a little better off on this day. Yes?
Oh, before I forgot, I wanted to say someone left a head of lettuce in the pantry, so I'm just concerned it may pick up bugs.
That is a shame. Yes, the pantry is meant for non-perishable food, and while it is nice that someone wanted to leave fresh vegetables, lettuce isn't great, and yes, that's unfortunate. Now, our pantry does get daily use, so I'm hoping that somebody will either use it or remove it soon. Yeah, as a word of warning to everyone, don't put fresh fruit and veg in there. Canned goods, bags of dry goods, all of that, perfect. Fresh fruit, not so much. Yeah, thank you for letting us know. Other mitzvot that go along with Purim.
Hear the Megillah.
Hear the Megillah. So this is what we'll be doing next Thursday night, and so please come in costume. There are prizes, both adult type prizes as well as children type prizes, some of which are edible, some of which are drinkable. Lots of different things and other fiddly bits for people that want those more tangible and non-perishable food and non-perishable prizes. So we are commanded to read the story of Megillah, which is, again, mentioned in the Megillah. It is very self-referential. And that means that you should be joining us. Now, if you can't join us for some reason, you can still fulfill this mitzvah on your own. While you wouldn't do the blessings, because that is reserved for doing it in a communal group where we read together, you can nonetheless still read it, and it is quite clear from halakha that you can do it in whichever language you actually understand. So if you are good with the Hebrew, go for it. If you're not, read it in English or any other language, and you will also be doing what is necessary there to remind ourselves of this story. Excellent. We still got 2 more to go.
Or costumes?
Wear costumes is a custom, a very
Custom.
good one, and I think I've got a good costume this year, but it is just a custom.
Alcohol's not one of them, is it?
Well, alcohol is something that people are very familiar with around Purim, and it is an aspect of one of them, which is to have a seudah, to have a feast. It is a mandatory party on Purim. Now, when we say party, a lot of people immediately jump to the alcohol side of it, and some people are more stringent on that mitzvah than any other mitzvah in the entire calendar, and we can have a long conversation about that at some point over some, coffee. But the actual seudah is just meant to have a joyous meal. Now, depending upon your resources, a joyous meal could just mean you've got a cup of wine that you normally wouldn't have. It could just mean you have a candy bar that goes with it, and then normally you're not able to have those things. A joyous meal can be a more modest form than an entire, Henry VIII table spread. Also, we have a unusual wrinkle this year. Because Purim is on a Thursday night, the actual feasting takes place on Friday. That is to say, the Purim feast is always the afternoon of Purim, which means the afternoon after the evening reading. A lot of people take that whole get drunk thing and put it on the evening side of it because people like to drink at night, but that is not when we are supposed to be feasting and drinking. That's when we're supposed to be doing the Megillah reading, and when we're supposed to make sure that we can still get up the next morning to also have the Megillah reading in that morning service. So the feasting is in the afternoon near the end of the holiday of Purim. However, the wrinkle this year is if that's going to happen on Friday, what is it going to bump up against? Shabbat. But don't worry, our ancestors have us covered. They have already gone over this in great detail. It just means have your seudah a little bit earlier than you otherwise would on a non-Purim versus Shabbat day, and make sure that you'll still have an appetite for Shabbat itself, and make sure also that your party doesn't interfere with your preparations for Shabbat. We're not allowed to shortchange Shabbat just because we're celebrating Purim. We can find room, and not just in our stomach, but also in our schedule, to be able to celebrate both. So don't wait for your Purim festivities to begin quite as late as you would on other years when Purim doesn't bump up against Shabbat. We've got one more mitzvah missing.
Just out of curiosity,
Yes.
back to the festival. It's not a it's not a festival day, so you can cook and you cook
Correct.
it anyways. But you can cook food for Shabbat on Purim, or
Yes.
does it have to be
No,
the
no,
leftovers?
no.
You can
Purim
cook
is not a Yom Tov. It is not a halachic festival day as a Chag. So it doesn't have any work restrictions on it, although one should minimize their work if possible. Tell your boss you've got a note from your rabbi. And that means that you absolutely can cook on Purim for Shabbat. No problem there. Excellent question.
Gifts to friends.
Gifts to others, to
Or
friends.
gifts to others,
Yeah,
but-
I mean, friends are certainly our usual first targets, but Purim is the original gift-giving holiday, not Hanukkah. And the gifts that were given for both this as well as to the poor were primarily of the edible variety. After all, Purim was first initiated and celebrated in a pre-consumer environment, which meant that we didn't have tchotchkes to give one another. Most of the things that would make us feel better that were accessible were of the edible or drinkable variety. That was where you found a lot of satisfaction in life when you couldn't just buy a new watch, a new coat, a new toy, a new whatever. You found something nice or you cooked something nice and then you shared it with other people. So that is the underlying idea there. But you'll notice that means that what you get is essentially a kind of potluck for Purim, where people would be giving cooked dishes to one another, and then everyone would sit down in their own home or collectively with their friends and enjoy them, or invite the poor to join them as well. Purim was actually designed to bring people together in the celebration rather than to have it be purely a private, isolated kind of experience. It was meant to have this potluck sort of atmosphere going on. Unfortunately, modern world, we tend to miss that, which means we miss the underlying idea that Purim was meant to be a celebration not just for us, that, hey, we get to have a party, or hey, we didn't get killed by Haman, but that the overall victory of Purim is meant to be shared even outside of the Jewish community. Because our victory over Haman was a victory for all over hate, was a victory for all over vengeance, was a victory of all over the force of Amalek. That Haman, as a representative of the Amalekites, who attack the weak, who attack those that are most vulnerable, who attack those that are in most need of defense, that with Haman's fall, the world should celebrate that that ideology was taken down. And this is something that we need to continue to remember. We do that by sharing the joy of Purim, which is the exact opposite of the Amalekite mindset, which is, it's all mine. Instead, for Purim, we share with everyone, and we make sure that everyone can rejoice, that we find some way to brighten the life of other people around us, because that is the ultimate antithesis and the ultimate defeat of the Amalekites. The Amalekites believed the world was a dark and miserable place. They believed it was a world full only of competition and only of dog eat dog. And we believe quite the contrary, as the story of Purim reflects, and as the structure of its observance reflects throughout Jewish history. So find a way to lift someone else up, whether it is with a bit of food, whether it is with a little joke or a gift, or whether it is through some other means. Help somebody feel a little more brightness on Purim. Help them realize that they are not alone. Help them realize that someone cares and that someone is willing to stick up for them, to defend them, to be on their side. If we all did this, well, that would be the best potluck we could possibly have. Shabbat Shalom.